The woman stood before the rusty gate, her fingers trembling against the cold metal. Inside the house, muffled voices. Outside, the wind dragged dry leaves across the cracked sidewalk. She took a deep breath, feeling the weight of all those years away. She didn't know yet, but that gate didn't just hold memories, it held secrets no one had dared to tell. Before we dive into this story, please leave a comment with a rating from 1 to 10 and tell us which city you're tuning in from. May this moment bring reflection and emotion to your heart. The early morning, light still seemed shy when she finally stepped through that gate. Helen was 37, but she felt as though she'd left yesterday, or a lifetime ago. 10 years abroad did that to you. They jumbled time, turned memories into something almost unreal. Like faded photographs you're not sure you lived or merely dreamed. The taxi had left minutes ago, and now she stood there alone, with 2 heavy suitcases and an even heavier heart. The street was the same, yet different. The trees had grown, some houses had fresh paint, others looked like they'd given up fighting against time. The corner bakery was now a cell phone store. The empty lot where she used to play hide and seek had become a parking lot. But her parents' house, the house was still there, or at least what was left of it. Helen felt her stomach clench as she noticed the details. The gate that once creaked delicately, almost musically, was now crooked, held together by makeshift wire. The blue paint her mother loved so much had peeled, revealing layers of other colors, other eras, other lives. The windows that always stayed open to let the smell of coffee escape, her mother used to say, now remained shut, with curtains that looked like they hadn't been washed in years. She pushed the gate slowly. The creak was different now, drier, sadder. The backyard was abandoned. The rose bushes her mother tended with such care had turned into weeds. The laundry tub where she washed clothes on Sundays was cracked, full of rotten leaves. The clothesline was still there, but empty, swaying in the wind like a skeleton from another life. Helen walked through the tall grass, feeling her heart pound harder and harder. Something was wrong, very wrong. This wasn't the kind of neglect from someone who was busy. This was the neglect of someone who had given up, or who wasn't there anymore. She climbed the 3 steps to the porch. The wood groaned under her feet. The front door had a new, modern lock, which contrasted with everything around it. Helen raised her hand to knock, but hesitated. For a second, she thought about turning back. Getting another taxi, going back to the airport, going back to the life she'd built far from here. But then she took a deep breath and knocked. Silence. She knocked again, harder. She heard footsteps, heavy, slow, like someone who didn't want to answer. The door opened just a few inches, held by a chain. A face appeared in the gap. It took her a few seconds to recognize. David? Her brother stared at her, expressionless. His eyes were the same, but there was something different, something hard, distant. Helen, he said without emotion, just stating a fact. Hi. I'm here. I couldn't call earlier. My phone had no signal at the airport and... What do you want? The question landed like a slap. Helen blinked, confused. What do I want? I came to see Mom and Dad. To see you guys. I wrote saying I was coming back. Didn't you get it? David remained standing in the doorway, not opening it further. They're not here. Not here? What do you mean they're not here? Where did they go? They went on a trip. Helen frowned. A trip? Mom and Dad? Mom was always afraid to travel. She doesn't even like leaving the city. Well, now she does, David cut in dryly. They went to visit some relatives in the countryside. They'll be gone a while. What relatives? We barely have any relatives, David. Distant cousins. You don't know them. Helen felt irritation rise. 10 years away, saving every penny, working 3 jobs at once, postponing her own life to finally be able to come back and help her family, and her brother greeted her like this, as if she were a door-to-door salesperson. "David, open this door properly. I've come a long way, I'm tired, and I want to come into my house." "Your house?" He let out a short, humorless laugh. "You don't live here anymore, Helen. It's been 10 years. But it's still our parents' house, and I'm their daughter just as much as you are." David was silent for a long moment. Then, with a heavy sigh, he unhooked the chain and opened the door. Helen entered with her suitcases and stopped. Everything was different. The old couch, where they spent hours watching soap operas together, was gone. In its place was a modern black faux leather sofa. The coffee table Dad made with his own hands wasn't there anymore. The walls, once filled with photographs, birthdays, graduations, Christmases, were empty. Completely empty. What happened here?" Helen asked, her voice cracking. "Renovation," David replied, closing the door behind her. "The house needed changes." "Changes? David? Where are the photos? Where's Mom and Dad's furniture? We gave some away, sold others, old stuff, taking up space." Helen felt her legs weaken. She walked through the living room as if she were in a museum of her own life. Everything had been erased, replaced, as if the family that had lived there for decades had never existed. "And Mom and Dad let you do this?" she asked, turning to her brother. David looked away. "They understood it was necessary." Necessary. Throwing away the family history was necessary. "You weren't here, Helen. You don't know how difficult things got. You don't know what we went through. Then tell me, I'm here now. Tell me what happened." David ran a hand over his face, looking tired. He had deep bags under his eyes, and he was thinner, much thinner than Helen remembered. "There's not much to tell. Life went on. The bills kept coming, and we had to manage, that's all." Helen wanted to believe him. She really did. But something inside her screamed that this wasn't the whole truth. It couldn't be. "David, where are Mom and Dad, really?" "I told you. They went on a trip." "And when are they coming back?" "I don't know. Next week, maybe, or the week after." "Do they have their cell phones? Can I call them?" "They left them here. Said they wanted to rest without phones bothering them." Each answer sounded rehearsed, too quick, too prepared. Helen looked around once more. The kitchen in the back looked different, too clean, too empty, as if no one had cooked there in ages. "Can I see their bedroom?" David tensed. "It's closed. We're painting in there." "Then let me see my room." "That's closed, too. Leak in the ceiling we had. To take everything out." Helen felt rage simmer. "David, stop lying to me." "I'm not lying." "Yes, you are. Something happened here and you don't want to tell me. What is it? What are you hiding?" "I'm not hiding anything," David exploded, his voice rising. "You're the one who disappeared, Helen. You're the one who left us here alone, trying to survive while you lived your fancy life out there." The silence that followed was heavy, dense, almost solid. Helen felt tears burn in her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. "I left to work," she said, her voice trembling. "To save money, to be able to help you all. And now I'm back. I came back with enough money to take care of Mom and Dad, to give them a good life. But you're treating me like I'm an enemy." David looked away again. There was something in him, something that looked like guilt or fear or both. "You should have come back sooner," he muttered. "What do you mean?" "Nothing. Forget it." Helen took a step forward. "David, look at me. Look me in the eyes and tell me, are Mom and Dad okay?" He raised his face. For a second, Helen saw the brother she knew, the boy who played with her in the backyard, who shared the last piece of cake, who promised to take care of their parents while she was away. But then he looked away again. "They're fine," he said, but his voice cracked, broke in the middle, and Helen knew She knew something terrible had happened. She knew her brother was lying, and she knew that if she wanted to find the truth, she'd have to find it herself. Helen didn't sleep that night. David had told her she could stay on the couch, but that in the morning she needed to find a hotel. "The house is a mess," he justified, without looking her in the eye, as if a mess were the problem. She lay there on the cold faux leather couch, staring at the ceiling, trying to understand what had happened to the family she'd left behind. The silence of the house was different from the silence she remembered. Before, it was a silence full of life. Dad's light snoring in the bedroom, Mom getting up in the middle of the night for water, the wall clock ticking comfortably away, the hours. Now the silence was empty, hollow, as if the house had forgotten what it was like to have people in it. In the middle of the night, she heard David leave his room. He went to the kitchen, opened the fridge, stood there for a while. Helen pretended to be asleep. She heard him go back to his room, lock the door. She heard him rummage through something that sounded like paper. She heard him sigh, heavily, like someone carrying too great a burden. When the sun began to lighten the sky, Helen got up. She walked through the living room, noticing every detail she had ignored the night before. There were lighter marks on the wall where photographs used to hang, poorly filled holes from nails that held frames. The wooden floor had marks from furniture that was no longer there. Everything had been erased in a hurry, carelessly, as if someone wanted to forget something quickly. She went to the kitchen. The fridge was almost empty. A few beers, old bread, margarine, nothing her mother used to keep. None of the containers of homemade food, the organized fruits, the spices in glass jars with handwritten labels. Helen opened the cabinets. She found new cheap plates and glasses bought at a discount store. The old plates, the ones with little flowers Mom got for her wedding, were gone. The porcelain cup she only used when they had visitors, gone too. It was as if someone had tried to erase her parents' presence from their own home. David appeared at the kitchen door, still in his pajamas. "Already up?" he asked, his voice hoarse with sleep. "Couldn't sleep well." He nodded, unsurprised. He went to the fridge, grabbed a beer. "In the morning?" Helen asked, frowning. "So what?" "Nothing, just seemed strange." David opened the can, took a long swallow. There was something in him, Helen noticed. Something nervous, tense, like someone expecting something bad to happen at any moment. "David, I need to see Mom and Dad's room." "I told you it's being renovated." "Then just let me take a look. I promise I won't disturb anything." "No." "Why?" "Because I said no." He exploded again. "Geez, Helen, you come back after 10 years and think you can boss around the house. Think you can interrogate, mess with things. This isn't your place anymore." Helen took a deep breath. She didn't want to fight. That wasn't what she'd come to do. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "You're right. I shouldn't have been gone so long. I know it was hard for you all. But I'm here now, David. And I want to help. I want to make things better." David looked away, took another swallow of beer. "Some things can't get better," he murmured. "What do you mean by that?" He didn't answer. He just finished the beer, crushed the can in his hand, and threw it in the trash. "I'm going to take a shower. When I get back, it would be good if you were already gone." Helen stood still in the kitchen, listening to her brother's heavy footsteps going upstairs. She felt anger and sadness mix inside her, but she also felt something else, determination. If David wasn't going to tell her what had happened, she would find out herself. She waited to hear the shower running. Then, with her heart pounding, she walked to the hallway. The door to her parents' bedroom was closed, but not locked. Helen slowly turned the doorknob, pushed the door open. The room was empty, completely empty. No bed, no Wardrobe. No dressers? Nothing. Just the bare wooden floor and peeling walls. There was no renovation, no painting, just emptiness. Helen entered, feeling her legs tremble. She ran her hand over the wall where her parents' bed used to be. There was still a mark on the floor, the darker outline where the wood hadn't faded from the sun. Where was the furniture? Where were her parents' things? She opened the built-in closet, which couldn't be removed. It was empty too. Not a single piece of clothing, not a shoe, not a forgotten belt. Everything had been taken, or thrown, away, or sold. Helen's heart was beating so fast she could hear her pulse in her ears. She left the room, closed the door carefully, and went to the other bedroom, what used to be hers and that David said was closed off due to a leak. She opened the door, also empty. No leak at all. She ran back to the living room, grabbed her purse, and left the house before David finished his shower. She didn't want any more deceptive explanations. She wanted true answers. And she knew where to start looking. Mrs. Henderson's house, the oldest neighbor on. The street was 3 doors down. A white-haired woman who had seen Helen grow up, who always brought cornbread to her parents, who knew everyone's life on that street. Helen rang the doorbell, waited, heard slow footsteps approaching. The door opened. Mrs. Henderson appeared, older, more stooped, but with the same sharp eyes. "Helen! My goodness, is that really you?" "Hi, Mrs. Henderson." The woman pulled her into a tight hug. She smelled of lavender and baking cake. "Girl, I've missed you. Come in, come in." Helen entered the house that seemed to have stopped in time. Everything was still. The same furniture, the same crocheted doilies, the same photographs on the wall. It was comforting and painful at the same time. "Sit down. I'll make us some coffee." "No need, Mrs. Henderson. Nonsense, no need. How long have you been back? 10 years. You deserve a coffee from Mrs. Henderson, yes, sir." While the neighbor prepared coffee, Helen looked at the photos on the wall. She saw an old one, from a barbecue in her parents' backyard. Everyone was there, Mom and Dad, David as a child, she herself at about 6, Mrs. Henderson and her late husband, other neighbors who had since moved away or passed on. Simpler times, happier times. "Here, dear." Mrs. Henderson returned with 2 steaming cups of coffee and a plate of shortbread cookies. "Now tell me, how was it out there? Did you find what you were looking for?" Helen held the warm cup between her hands. "Yes, I did. I saved a good amount of money, enough to take care of my parents for the rest of their lives. That's why I went, you know, to be able to come back and give them a better life." Mrs. Henderson was silent. She stirred her coffee slowly, without looking at Helen. "And are they okay?" Helen asked, her voice faltering. "My parents—" The neighbor continued stirring her coffee, once, twice, 3 times. "Mrs. Henderson." The woman finally looked up, and Helen saw something there that made her heart stop. Pity, sadness, and fear. "My dear," Mrs. Henderson began, her voice trembling, You don't know?" "Don't know what?" "David said they went on a trip, but I know he's lying. I went into their room and it's all empty. The furniture is gone. Their clothes are gone. Everything. I need to know what happened. Please, Mrs. Henderson, please tell me." The neighbor placed her cup on the table. She clasped her hands in her lap, like someone praying. She closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, they were filled with tears. "Your parents didn't go on a trip, Helen." The world seemed to stop. "Then, where are they?" Mrs. Henderson took Helen's hand in hers, old and trembling. "I don't know where they are now, but I know how they left here. And it wasn't pretty, my dear. It wasn't pretty at all." Helen felt tears stream down, her face unable to control them. "Tell me, please, I need to know." And Mrs. Henderson told her. She said that about 6 months ago, things started to get strange next door, that David had brought new friends, People the neighbor had never seen before. People who came and went in the middle of the night. That parties started, loud music, arguments. That Helen's parents tried to talk to their son, asked him to be more respectful, but he wasn't listening anymore. She said David had lost his job months before that he started drinking more, getting nervous, aggressive, that one day she heard shouts coming from the house, things breaking, and when she looked through the window, she saw Helen's father trying to calm David, and David pushing the old man, screaming that the house was his too, that he had as much right as them. She said things got worse, that David started selling the furniture from the house. First, the things he said were his, then the things that belonged to everyone, that the parents tried to stop him, but he said he needed the money, that he had debts, that they didn't understand anything. She said there came a day when Helen's parents appeared at her door with 2 small bundles of clothes, asking if they could sleep there for one night, that they were afraid of their own son, that David had locked them out of the house, screaming that that place wasn't theirs anymore, that they were a burden, that he was tired of taking care of useless old people. I let them sleep here, of course. Mrs. Henderson continued, crying now. They could stay as long as they needed, but the next day David showed up here. He knocked on the door, apologized, said he'd had too much to drink, that he was sorry. Your parents, they believed him, my dear. They always believed in their boy. They went back home. And then? Helen could barely speak. Then, a few weeks passed. I saw your parents getting thinner and sadder. They barely left the house. When I ran into them on the street, they'd look away. Your father, who was always so talkative, barely said anything anymore. Your mother... Mrs. Henderson paused, wiped away her tears. Your mother, I saw her at the small market once, asking the clerk if he could sell her the fruits that were about to spoil for cheaper. She, who always bought the nicest things for her house, was asking for almost spoiled fruit, Helen. Helen was sobbing now, unable to stop. And one day, I woke up in the middle of the night, heard noise. I looked through the window and saw your parents leaving the house. It was 4 a.m, Helen. 4 a.m, and they were leaving with little bundles, walking slowly down the street, as if they didn't want to be seen. I wanted to go after them, but, oh, my knee is bad. I can't run anymore. By the time I managed to get downstairs, they had already turned the corner, and they never came back. What do you mean, never came back? David told everyone they had gone on a trip, but I know that wasn't it. No one travels in the middle of the night, with small bundles, in secret. I think he kicked them out for good, Helen, and they had nowhere to go. Helen left Mrs. Henderson's house with shaky legs and a heart broken into pieces. There was so much hatred inside her that she could barely breathe properly. Hatred for her brother, hatred for herself for having been away so long, hatred for the world that let such things happen. But more than hatred, she had fear. Fear that it was too late. She returned to her parents' house. No, it wasn't her parents' house anymore. It was the house David had stolen from them, and found her brother sitting on the couch watching television, drinking another beer. David, she said, her voice cold as ice. He didn't even turn his head. I thought you'd already left. Where are Mom and Dad? Now, he looked. He saw her expression, and he knew that she knew. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't lie to me anymore. I talked to Mrs. Henderson. She told me everything. How you treated them, how you sold their things from the house, how you kicked them out, how you abandoned them on the street. David stood up, threw the beer can on the floor. Abandoned me? I stayed here, Helen. I stayed taking care of them while you were out there living your life. I'm the one who put up with Dad complaining about everything, Mom nagging, demanding, always demanding. I'm the one who had to give up my plans, my dreams, to stay here. No one told you to do that. I left precisely to save money and be able to help. Help? David laughed bitterly. What did you send? $100 a month? $200 when you were feeling generous? Do you know how much it cost to support them? Food, medicine, electricity, water, gas bills. Do you know how much I spent? So you sold their house, their things, their dignity. The house is mine too. I live here. And where are they? Living, David? Where? Her brother looked away, and in that gesture, in that silence, Helen got the confirmation she needed. He didn't know. He had put his parents out on the street and hadn't even cared to know where they had gone. "You're a monster," she whispered. "I'm a realist. They were getting old, sick, useless. I couldn't carry that weight anymore, and you won't find them either, Helen. Old people on the street, you know what happens? They become homeless, go under an overpass, or die of cold on a sidewalk. If they're lucky, they go to some shelter. But it won't be good. So stop judging me and leave. Go live your rich life and leave me alone." Helen felt her hand tingle with the urge to hit her brother's face, but she didn't, because hitting him wouldn't bring her parents back. It wouldn't fix anything. So she did the only thing she could do. She left, and went looking. She started in the neighborhood. She checked every corner, every park, every bar. She asked people if they had seen an elderly couple. She described what they looked like. She showed an old photo she had kept in her wallet, the three of them together, at a birthday years ago, when everything was still simple. Most people shook their heads. They hadn't seen them, or didn't remember, or didn't want to get involved. But some remembered something. A newspaper vendor said he had seen an elderly couple asking for water on a hot morning weeks ago. They looked tired, like they had walked a long way. A bakery clerk remembered an old lady who came in to ask if there was any stale bread left over. "I gave her some bread that was going to be thrown away," she said. "The lady thanked me so much it made me feel sad." A taxi driver said he had given a free ride to an elderly couple who were walking in the rain without an umbrella. "I took them to the town square. They didn't have money to go further. They said they would be fine, but it stuck with me, you know. You see all sorts of things in this city." Each piece of information was a stab to Helen's chest, but it was also a clue, a trail, a path. She went to the town square. It was late, afternoon now, and the square was crowded. Children played, teenagers dated, street vendors offered churros and popcorn. In the midst of all that life, there were also the invisible, the homeless, the forgotten, the ones the world pretended didn't exist. Helen started talking to them, one by one. Some ignored her. Others held out their hands, asking for money. But some talked, told their stories, and asked what she was looking for. "An elderly couple," Helen repeated, showing the photo. "My father is tall, thin, has white hair, a bit long. My mother is short, wears glasses, has a birthmark. On her face, a man sitting on a bench in dirty clothes with a mutt beside him looked at the photo carefully. "I think I've seen them," he said. Helen's heart raced. "Really? Where?" "Here, in the square. But it's been a few weeks. They stayed a few days sleeping under that tree. Then they disappeared." "Disappeared how? Where did they go?" The man shrugged. "That's how it is on the street. You appear, you disappear. Maybe they went to a shelter, or downtown. There are more people there, more places to get food." "Which shelter?" "There's one on Maple Avenue. Opens at night, closes in the morning, but it's hard to get a spot. There are a lot of people." Helen wrote down the address, thanked him, gave the man some money. He accepted it, but before she left, he gently held her arm. "Lady, just a piece of advice. The street changes people. If you find them, they might not be the same ones you remember. The street takes something out of you on the inside too, not just the outside." Helen nodded, swallowed her tears and continued on. She went to the shelter on Maple Avenue. It was an old building, with peeling walls and a huge line of people waiting on the sidewalk. Helen approached the entrance, where a woman in a lab coat checked a list of names. "Excuse me," Helen said. "I'm looking for my parents. Could they have come here?" The woman looked at her with tiredness. She must hear stories like this every day. What do they look like? Helen described them, showed the photo. The woman looked quickly, shook her head. I don't remember seeing them, but we serve a lot of people. You can ask Mr. Peterson inside. He's been here for years, knows almost everyone who passes through. Helen went in. The place smelled of disinfectant and reheated food. There were mattresses lined up on the floor, people lying down, some sleeping, others just staring at the ceiling with blank expressions, children running between the beds, old people coughing, a constant noise of voices, footsteps, muffled cries. It was a portrait of America that most pretended not to see. The America of the unlucky, the ones the system forgot, the ones who became statistics, and somewhere, perhaps, were her parents. Mr. Peterson was a man in his 60s with white hair and beard, who was organizing blankets in a corner. Helen introduced herself, explained what she was looking for, showed him the photo. He took the photo, brought it closer to his eyes. He was silent for a while. Then he sighed. I think they did pass through here. About 3 weeks ago, more or less. Helen could barely breathe. Are they still here? No. They only stayed a couple of nights. Then they left. Where to? I don't know, ma'am. We don't control where people go. But I remember them because they didn't look. Like street people. They looked like people who had had a life, you know, a home, a family. The gentleman was polite, thanked everyone. The lady was quiet, barely spoke. But you could tell she was ashamed, very ashamed to be there. Helen felt tears fall uncontrollably now. Did they say anything, any clue where they were going? Mr. Peterson scratched his beard, thinking. The lady, I remember she mentioned something about the church, that they were going to try to ask for help at the church. I don't know which one, but there's that big one downtown, Our Lady of Mercy Cathedral. A lot of people go there for help. Helen thanked him, hugged the old man tightly. He returned the hug gently. You'll find them, he said. I know you will. Just don't give up. She promised she wouldn't. She left the shelter and went straight to the church. It was already getting dark. The streets became emptier, more dangerous. But Helen didn't even feel fear, only urgency. Our Lady of Mercy Cathedral was huge, imposing, with its tall spires and heavy wooden doors. Helen climbed the steps, pushed the door open. Inside, it was silent. A few people prayed in the pews. Lit candles flickered in the gloom. She approached a nun who was organizing hymnals. Sister, excuse me. The nun turned with a gentle smile. Yes, my dear. I'm looking for my parents. I was told they might have come here for help. She described them, showed the photo. The nun looked carefully, and her face changed. It softened, grew sadder. Yes, they were here, about a week ago, perhaps. Are they okay? Do you know where they went? The nun motioned for Helen to sit on a pew. She sat beside her. My dear, they came here asking for help. They were very weak, hungry. We gave them food, clean clothes. We offered them shelter here at the parish for a few days. But your father, he has a lot of pride. He said he couldn't accept charity, that they would find a way. A way how? They're old, they have nowhere to go. I know. I tried to convince them to stay, but they didn't want to. Your mother cried, but your father, he was determined. He said he wouldn't be a burden to anyone, that they would manage on their own. And you let them go. The nun held Helen's hand. My dear, we can't force anyone to stay. We offer help, but it's up to the person to accept it. I gave them the address of another shelter, on the eastward side. I told them they might be able to stay there longer, until they found something better. Which address? The nun wrote it on a piece of paper. Helen took it, pressed it against her chest. Did they talk about me? She asked, her voice failing. Did they talk about their daughter? The nun hesitated, then nodded. Your mother spoke of you. She said her daughter was far away, that she worked hard, that one day she would come back. She had a lot of faith in that, you know. Even at rock bottom, she believed you would return. Helen broke down crying right there in the middle of the church, and the nun hugged her, let her cry, murmured quiet prayers. When Helen finally managed to calm down, it was already night. The church was almost empty. She stood up, thanked the nun, and left with the paper clutched in her hand. The eastward side was far, but she would go there. She would go to the ends of the earth if she had to, because now she was sure her parents were alive. They were somewhere, and she wouldn't stop until she found them. Helen caught a bus that traversed the city to the eastward side. The journey took almost 2 hours, passing through neighborhoods she'd never visited, streets she didn't know, lives she'd never imagined. She looked out the window and saw people coming home from work, children playing on the sidewalk, crowded bars, life happening as it always did, indifferent to anyone's despair. She got off on the street the nun had indicated. It was a poorer area, with simple houses, cracked walls, intertwined power lines forming webs over the street. The shelter was in a one-story building, painted white, with a wooden cross on the door. There were a few people sitting on the sidewalk, smoking, talking softly. Helen went in. A woman in her 40s, thin, with her hair tied in a bun, was serving soup in plastic bowls to a line of people. She looked at Helen, evaluating if she was another person needing food or something else. "Can I help?" "You?" the woman asked without stopping her serving. "I'm looking for my parents," Helen said, already pulling the photo from her pocket. It was automatic now. She had shown that photo so many times it seemed like a rehearsed gesture. "I was told they might have come here." The woman wiped her hands on her apron, took the photo, looked at it carefully, frowned, looked again. I think I've seen them." Helen's heart leaped. "Really? When? Are they still here?" Calm down. Let me finish serving these folks, then we'll talk properly." Helen stood there, watching. The woman continued serving soup, bread, juice. She talked to each person, asked if they were okay, if they needed anything. There was a kindness in her, a patience that Helen admired. It must be hard to do that work every day, to see so much pain, so much need, and to stay there, firm, serving, helping. When the line finally ended, the woman motioned for Helen to sit at a small corner table. "My name is Vera," she said, sitting down herself. "I coordinate this shelter here. And yes, I remember your parents. Are they okay? Where are they?" Vera sighed, ran a hand over her tired face. "They stayed here for about 4 days. They arrived very debilitated. Your father had a bad cough. Your mother could barely stand. I offered to take them to the health clinic, but your father refused. He said it would pass, that they just needed rest and food." "And did they get better?" "A little. But look, I'll be honest with you. They weren't doing well. Not just physically. Emotionally, you know. You could tell they were people who had suddenly ended up on the street. They weren't used to it. Your mother cried at night quietly so no one would hear. But I heard her. And your father, he would sit in the corner staring into space as if he had given up." Helen felt her chest tighten with every word. "What happened next? Why did they leave?" "Because here we can only shelter people for a few days. It's not a hotel, it's not a boarding house. It's a temporary place for those in an emergency situation. Afterward, we tried to refer them to larger shelters, to social programs, things like that, but it's all very difficult, very bureaucratic, and your father, he didn't want to. He said he wouldn't bother anyone, wouldn't be a burden." "That damn pride," Helen murmured. "He was always like that, never accepted help. Thought needing someone was a weakness." "It's common for people of his generation," Vera said with sadness. "They were raised that way, thinking asking for help is shameful, and in the end they suffer more because of it." "Do you know where they went?" Vera hesitated, looked around, as if checking if anyone was listening. Then she leaned closer to Helen, her voice lower. "Look, I shouldn't be telling you this, but I feel sorry for you, and sorry for them. So I'll tell you, there are some places in the city where homeless people gather. It's not a shelter, it's nothing official. They're abandoned places. Old buildings, empty lots, underpasses. The police pretend not to see, City Hall pretends not to know, and people live there as best they can. There's a place like that nearby, behind the old textile mill. A lot of people live there. They set up some tents, some shacks with tarps. It's dangerous, it's dirty, but it's what they have. And my parents might be there? I don't know. But when they left here, I saw them heading in that direction. They might have gone there. They might have gone somewhere else. But if I were you, I'd start there." Helen stood up, ready to go. "Hey, wait," Vera held her arm. "Don't go now. It's night. That place is dangerous during the day. Imagine at night. Wait until morning. Go in daylight and be careful. There are good people there, but there are bad people too. Desperate people. And desperate people do anything." Helen knew Vera was right, but the idea of waiting another night, knowing her parents could be so close, was almost unbearable. "Can you let me stay here tonight?" she asked. "I don't need a bed or anything, just a corner to sit, and in the morning I'll go." Vera agreed. She set up a chair for Helen in a quieter corner, brought a blanket, a plate of soup, a piece of bread. "Eat, you'll need strength for tomorrow." Helen ate without tasting. Her mind was far away. She thought about her parents. She thought about what their lives had been like in recent weeks. She thought about all the times. She missed them but didn't go back because she was too busy. All the calls she didn't make because she was too tired. All the excuses she made to justify her own absence. And now they were here, somewhere in this immense city, lost, alone, thinking no one cared about them. But she cared so much it hurt, and she would prove it to them. She would find them. She would take care of them. She would fix everything that had broken. She didn't sleep that night. She stayed there, sitting in the chair, watching the clock, waiting for the sun to rise. At 5 in the morning, when the light began to appear, she got up. Vera was already awake too, preparing breakfast for the people who were starting to wake up. "Going now?" she asked. "Yes, I can't wait any longer." Vera grabbed a bag, put some things inside, bottles of water, packages of crackers, fruits. "Take this. If you find them, they'll need it. And take this also." She extended a piece of paper with a phone number. "It's mine. If anything, call me. If you need help, a place to bring them, call me. We'll figure something out." Helen hugged Vera tightly. "Thank you. Thank you for everything. Go. And good luck." Helen stepped out into the cold dawn. The streets were still quiet. She followed the directions Vera had given her. She walked about 10 blocks until she reached the old textile mill. It was a huge, abandoned building with broken windows and graffitied walls. The main gate was chained shut, but there was a hole in the back fence she could squeeze through. Helen took a deep breath and entered. The land behind the factory was large, and it was occupied. There were dozens of shacks made of tarp, wood, cardboard. People waking up, lighting makeshift fires to warm coffee. Children still sleeping, wrapped in old blankets, skinny dogs walking between the tents. It was a slice of America that didn't appear in the newspapers, that didn't make it into statistics, that the government pretended didn't exist. Helen started walking between the shacks. Some people looked with suspicion, others didn't even care, too busy with their own survival to worry about strangers. She stopped in front of a woman washing clothes in a plastic basin. "Excuse me," Helen said, her voice trembling. "I'm looking for my parents. Have you seen them?" She showed the photo. The woman looked without much interest. "No." Helen continued. She asked more people, showed the photo, described her parents. Most shook their heads. They didn't know. They hadn't seen them. They didn't remember. until a boy of about 10, covered in dirt, stopped in front of her. "I know where they are," he said. Helen knelt in front of him. "Really? You know?" "Yeah, but I'll only tell you if you give me money." Helen almost laughed. Even there, at rock bottom, things worked with money. "Okay. I'll give it to you, but take me to them first. You give me now, I take you later. No, first you take me, then I'll give it to you. I promise." The boy thought, then shrugged. "Okay, come on." He started walking between the shacks. Helen followed, her heart pounding. They passed people waking up, campfires, dogs, crying children, until the boy stopped in front of a shack a little more secluded, built with blue tarp and some pieces of wood. "They're in there," he said. Helen looked at the shack. It seemed so fragile, so small, as if a strong wind could blow everything away. "Are you sure?" "Yeah. They arrived a few days ago. Don't talk to anyone, just stay inside." Helen took the money from her purse, more than she had promised, gave it to the boy. He took it, checked it, and ran off. She stood there in front of the shack, afraid to approach, afraid of what she would find, afraid that it was them, afraid that it wasn't. Then she took a deep breath and called out, "Mom? Dad?" Silence. "Mom? Dad? Is that you?" She heard a movement inside, a sound of someone stirring. Then the tarp opened, and she saw. It was them, but at the same time it wasn't. Her father was unrecognizable, too thin, his clothes dirty, torn, his beard grown out, matted, his eyes sunken with dark circles, his skin yellowish, sickly. Her mother behind him was even worse. So thin she looked like a skeleton, her white hair disheveled, her glasses cracked, hanging crookedly on her face. And that expression of someone who had given up, of someone who no longer expected anything from life. The three stood there still, looking at each other. And then her mother whispered, as if she couldn't believe it, "Helen." And Helen collapsed. She fell to her knees there on the dirt ground, crying, sobbing, unable to speak. And her mother too. And her father, for the first time in perhaps years, let the tears fall. They had found each other, but the reunion was not one of joy. It was of pain, of shame, of everything that had been lost, and of everything that perhaps could still be saved. They stayed like that for a time that seemed eternal, embracing, crying, unable to speak, because words were too small for everything they felt, for the relief, for the despair, for the shame, for the guilt, for love. The people around looked from a distance but didn't approach. They had seen so many dramas in that place that one more made no difference, or perhaps they were giving them privacy. The little privacy that was possible there. Finally, it was her father who pulled away first. He wiped his face with the back of his hand, tried to compose himself, but it was impossible. He was shattered. You could see it. "You shouldn't have come," he said, his voice hoarse. "You shouldn't have seen us like this." Helen shook her head, still crying. "How can you say that? You're my parents. I spent the whole week looking for you. I wasn't going to give up." "But now you've seen," her mother whispered, unable to look her daughter in the eyes. "Seen what we've become. Homeless, street people, nobody. You are not nobody. You are my parents, and none of this should have happened. None of it." Helen stood up, wiped her face, tried to control herself. She looked at the miserable shack where her parents were living, a blue tarp tied to pieces of wood, the dirt floor. Inside she could see some old blankets, a bag with clothes, a half-empty water bottle. It was so little, so sad, so inhuman. "We're leaving here," Helen said firmly. "Now. I'm taking you to a hotel. I'll get you a hot shower, clean clothes, food, and then we'll talk. But first, let's get out of here." Her father shook his head. "No, Helen, we can't accept that from you." "What do you mean you can't? I'm your daughter." "And that's precisely why we're not going to be a burden to you. We were already a burden to David. We won't be again. Helen felt anger rise. That damn pride again, that stubbornness that only caused suffering. You are not a burden. Never were. David. She paused, took a deep breath, tried to control her fury. David is an idiot, a selfish jerk. He had no right to do what he did to you, and I'm going to make him pay for it. But now, you're coming with me. I'm not asking. I'm telling you. Helen, her mother began. No, Mom. Enough. Enough with the pride. Enough with thinking that asking for help is shameful. I left to work. I spent 10 years saving money. Do you know why? For this. To be able to come back and give our parents a good life. And when I come back, I find out you kicked them out like they were dogs. The silence that followed was heavy. Her father and mother looked at each other, and then finally her father nodded. Slowly, tiredly, like someone who no longer had the strength to fight. Okay, he murmured. We'll go. Helen helped her parents gather the few things they had. Some clothes, a blanket, an old photo. They had kept, crumpled and dirty, but still recognizable, a photo of the whole family at a birthday years ago. Seeing that photo made Helen's heart ache even more. They had taken that. Of all they could have taken, they took a family photograph, the family that abandoned them. They left the lot, walked through the streets. Helen tried to call a taxi, but 3 passed by, ignoring them, probably because they saw her parents' condition. Homeless people don't get into taxis. They're not welcome anywhere, so Helen used a rideshare app. She ordered a car. When it arrived, the driver frowned upon seeing Helen's parents. But she got in first, pulled her parents inside, closed the door. If the guy complained, she'd deal with it. But he didn't complain. He just turned the air conditioning up full blast, probably trying to lessen the smell. Helen gave the address of a hotel downtown. It wasn't the most luxurious, but it was clean, decent, with a spacious room and a good bathroom. During the ride, no one spoke. Her parents looked out the window, as if they had forgotten what it was like to ride in a car. What it was like. To see the city from this perspective, fast, comfortable, protected. When they arrived at the hotel, Helen paid for a week in advance. She got the key, took her parents to the room. It was simple. A double bed, a twin bed, a television, a small table, a bathroom. But for those who had slept on the street, it must have seemed like a palace. Take a shower, Helen said gently. There's shampoo, soap, clean towels. Take as long as you want. I'll go downstairs, buy some new clothes for you. When I get back, we'll order food, okay? Her mother nodded, her eyes full of tears. She couldn't speak. She didn't need to. Her look said it all. Helen left the room, went downstairs, and walked to a nearby department store. She bought simple clothes for them, nothing too extravagant. Her father always liked plain shirts, slacks. Her mother, floral dresses, cardigans. She also bought slippers, socks, a toiletry bag with a comb, brush, cream. When she returned to the room, she heard the shower running. She waited. After a while, her father came out of the bathroom. He had a towel wrapped around his waist, his wet hair slicked back. He had lost so much weight that his ribs showed. His skin was full of bruises, scratches that hadn't healed properly, but he was clean, and that alone made a difference. I brought clothes, Helen said, showing the bags. Her father took them, thanked her softly, and went back into the bathroom to change. Her mother came out next, also thin, also bruised, but clean, with her wet hair combed. She looked 10 years younger like that. She changed into the clothes Helen brought. The dress was a little loose, but it fit. She ran her hand over the fabric, feeling the softness, and a sad smile appeared at the corner of her lips. It's been a while since I wore new clothes, she said. Helen hugged her mother, and her mother melted into that hug. She cried again, but now it was different. It wasn't despair, it was relief, it was gratitude, it was love. When everyone was ready, Helen ordered food from the hotel phone. She ordered rice, beans, steak, salad, juice, dessert. simple food, but prepared with care. When it arrived, they set everything up on the small table in the room. "Let's eat," Helen said. They sat down. Her father looked at the food as if he couldn't believe it was real, her mother too. Then, slowly, they began to eat. At first, calmly. But then, it was as if everything they had held back came out at once. They ate quickly, desperately, like people who didn't know when they would have food again. Helen saw that and had to swallow her tears. Her parents. Her parents had been hungry. Really hungry. When they finished, they sat there, in silence, until Helen finally asked, "What happened? Tell me everything, from the beginning." Her father took a deep breath, looked at her mother. She nodded, giving him permission to speak. "It started about 2 years ago," he said. "When David lost his job, he got bad, started drinking more, became irritable, nervous. We tried to help, but he didn't want to listen. He said we didn't understand, that the world had changed, that it was hard." "And it was," her mother added. "It was hard for him. But we tried to understand, let him stay at home, didn't charge rent, cooked for him, paid the bills. We thought it would pass, that he would find another job, that things would get better. But they didn't get better," her father continued. "He got into some debts, with whom we don't know, but men came to the house collecting. He got nervous, aggressive. One day he sold the television, said he needed the money. We let him. Then he sold the stereo, then other things, and we let him because he was our son, and we always think we can save our children." Helen felt her chest tighten. "Until one day," her mother said, her voice faltering. "He said he was going to sell the house, our house. He said he was going to put it in his name because we were too old to take care of anything, that we should go to a nursing home or live with relatives." "But we don't have relatives," her father said, "and nursing homes. We were afraid. You hear all sorts of stories, so we refused, said the house was ours, that we had worked our whole lives to pay for it, that we weren't leaving." "He got furious," her mother continued, "started screaming, said we were a burden, that he had sacrificed his life to take care of us, that you had left and put everything on his shoulders, that it wasn't fair." Helen felt guilt pierce her chest like a blade. "And then?" she asked, her voice weak. "Then he started treating us badly," her father said. "He wouldn't let us use the kitchen properly, said we ate too much, locked the fridge, started bringing people into the house. His friends, we didn't know who they were, made noise in the middle of the night, drank. Once there was a fight, the police came. It was horrible. We tried to talk to him," her mother said, but he wasn't listening anymore. And one day he simply locked us out, put our things in a bag and said we didn't live there anymore, that the house was his now. "We didn't know what to do," her father said, his voice breaking. "We were on the street with our bags, not knowing where to go. We tried to go back, knock on the door, but he wouldn't open it. He stayed inside, pretending not to hear. We went to Mrs. Henderson's house," her mother said. "She took us in. She was so good to us, but we couldn't stay there forever. We wouldn't be a burden to her either. So we went back," her father said. "David opened the door, apologized, said he'd had too much to drink. We believed him. We always believe because we want to believe. But it was worse when we came back," her mother murmured. "He didn't give us proper food, wouldn't let us use the bathroom when he was home, locked our bedroom door from the outside some nights. Said it was so we wouldn't mess with his things. But we knew. He wanted us to leave. He wanted us to give up. And we gave up," her father said, tears falling. "One morning we took the few things they had still left us to have and left, slipped out quietly without making a sound, and never came back." Helen was devastated. Every word was an open wound, every detail a stab. "And why didn't you call me?" she asked, crying. "Why didn't you tell me?" Her mother looked her in the eyes. "Because we were ashamed, my dear. Ashamed of having failed, of not having been able to hold the family together, of having raised a son who did this to us. And because we didn't want to mess up your life. You were so far away, working so hard. We didn't want to be another problem." "You were never a problem, never. I would have come back instantly. I would have taken care of you." "We know that now," her father said, "but at the time we only felt shame and pain and exhaustion. We just wanted to disappear." Helen hugged them both, held them tight, as if she could fix everything with that hug, as if she could erase the months of suffering, of hunger, of cold, of despair. "Never again," she whispered. "Never again will you go through this. I'm here now, and I won't let anything bad happen to you, I promise." And she was going to keep that promise, no matter what it cost. The following days were about rebuilding. Helen took her parents to the doctor. Her father had a severe respiratory infection, her mother severe anemia and uncontrolled blood pressure, but nothing that couldn't be treated. The doctor said they had been lucky. A few more weeks on the street and things could have gotten much worse. Helen bought medicines. She made sure her parents took them at the right times. She bought new clothes, comfortable shoes. She took her mother to the salon to get her hair cut, her father to the barbershop for a shave. Small gestures that gradually restored their dignity. But it wasn't just the body that needed healing. It was the soul, too, and that would take longer. Her mother would wake up in the middle of the night, startled, looking around as if she expected everything to be an illusion. That the comfortable room, the soft bed, the food in the fridge would disappear. Helen would find her. Like that some nights, sitting on the edge of the bed, trembling, crying softly. Her father had nightmares. He would scream in his sleep, wake up sweaty, confused. It would take a few seconds to understand where he was. And even when awake, there was a sadness in his eyes, a defeat, as if something inside him had broken and couldn't be fixed. Helen tried to talk, tried to comfort them, but she knew some wounds were too deep. They didn't heal quickly. Perhaps they would never heal completely, but she would try. She would do everything in her power. After a week at the hotel, Helen rented a small apartment. 2 bedrooms, living room, kitchen, bathroom, simple but cozy. She bought new furniture, not too luxurious because she knew her parents would feel uncomfortable, but comfortable, functional. A soft couch, a dining table where they could eat together, good beds with mattresses that didn't hurt their backs. She took her parents to see the apartment before they moved in. She wanted them to approve. She wanted them to feel at home. When they entered, her mother stopped in the middle of the living room, looked around, ran her hand over the furniture, went to the window, looked at the street below, and then turned to Helen. "This is, for us. It's for you," Helen confirmed. "For us to live together, as long as you want, or forever, whatever you prefer." Her mother burst into tears, but this time it was different. It wasn't tears of pain, it was of gratitude, of not believing that this could be real. Her father didn't cry, but he hugged Helen tightly, as he hadn't hugged her in years, and whispered in her ear, "Thank you, my daughter. You saved us." In the following days they moved in. Helen helped organize everything, bought pots, plates, glasses, towels, filled the fridge with food, filled the cabinets with groceries. She wanted her parents to never lack anything again, never again be afraid of not having food to eat. Her mother, little by little, began to cook again. At first, hesitantly, as if she had forgotten how. But then with more confidence. She made the beans the way she always did, the pot roast, the cornbread cake. And seeing her there in the kitchen with her apron, humming softly, Helen felt that things were finally starting to fall into place. Her father started going out for walks, at first just to the corner, then a little further. He bought the newspaper, talked to the people at the bakery, small steps, but important ones. It was as if he was becoming part of the world again, the world that had forgotten him for a while, but that now welcomed him back. Helen got a job. She didn't really need the money, she had saved enough, but she wanted to work. She wanted to have a routine, and she wanted her parents to have one too. Not a heavy routine, but something. Something to say that life went on, that it was worth continuing. But there was one thing that still needed to be done. One thing Helen had postponed, but could no longer postpone. She needed to confront David. She went alone. Didn't say anything to her parents. She knew they would ask her not to go, to let it go, not to stir things up. But she needed to. She needed to look at him and say everything that had been stuck in her throat for so long. She arrived at the house that had been her parents', which David had now taken for himself. She rang the doorbell, waited. David opened the door. When he saw Helen, he frowned. "What do you want?" "To talk. I have nothing to talk about with you, but I have a lot to say to you." Helen pushed the door open, entered. David tried to stop her, but she was already inside. The house was worse than last time. Dirty, messy. It smelled of cigarettes and stale beer. There were empty bottles scattered around, full ashtrays, clothes thrown on the floor. "Nice what you did with our parents' house," Helen said, her sarcasm heavy. "It's my house now," David replied, closing the door, "and you have no right to enter here uninvited." "Right? You want to talk about rights? You who kicked our parents out onto the street, who sold their things, who treated them like trash." "I didn't kick anyone out. They left because they wanted to." "Lies," Helen screamed. "I know everything, David. I talked to Mrs. Henderson. I talked to Mom and Dad. I know how you treated them. I know you locked them out. I know you said they were a burden. I know everything." David was silent. Then he threw his head back and laughed, a bitter, joyless laugh. "So what? What are you going to do? Lecture me? Judge me? You who disappeared for 10 years and now come back as a savior?" "I left to work, to save money to help the family." "Help? You barely sent any money, and when you did, it was a pittance. You think that kept them going? I'm the one who supported this house. I'm the one who paid for electricity, water, gas, food. I'm the one who put up with them nagging every day. You just disappeared and came back when you felt like it. And that gave you the right to kick them out onto the street, to let them go hungry, sleep under an overpass. They weren't my responsibility. They were our parents." Helen's scream echoed through the dirty house. David was silent, looked away. "You don't understand," he murmured. "You weren't here. You didn't see what it was like, how they got old, dependent, annoying, how I had to give up everything to take care of them. I had to give up my plans, my dreams. I got stuck here in this house, in this crappy life, while you were out there, free, doing what you wanted. And you think I didn't have to give up anything? You think it was easy for me? I spent 10 years working like a slave, living in a tiny place, eating badly, having no life, just to save money. And do you know why? For them! To be able to come back and give our parents a good life. And when I come back, I find out you kicked them out like they were dogs." David turned his face away, but Helen saw a tear. Escape. And she realized her brother wasn't a monster. He was a broken man, frustrated, angry at himself, angry at life, who had taken it out on their parents because it was easier than facing his own mistakes. But that didn't justify it. Nothing justified it. "Where's the money?" Helen asked, calmer now. "What money?" "The money you made selling Mom and Dad's things, the furniture, the clothes, everything." David shrugged. "Spent it. Paid debts." "Debts from what?" "Drinking, gambling, things that are none of your business." Helen took a deep breath. She wanted to scream. She wanted to hit him, but she knew it wouldn't help. David was lost. He had been lost for a long time, and only he could find himself again. "You're giving the house back," Helen said firmly. David let out a dry laugh. "Of course not. The house is mine. I live here. The house is in our parents' name, and they will take your name off it. They'll sue you if necessary, and they'll win. because you have no right to this house. Try it. Go to court. We'll see who wins. I will, and I'll win. But that's not all. I'm going to make you pay for everything you did to them. Every tear, every night on the street, every moment of hunger and fear. You will pay. With what? I have nothing. Then you'll have to find it. You'll have to work. You'll have to manage. The same way you demanded Mom and Dad do. You'll feel what it's like to have nothing. And then, maybe, you'll understand. Helen turned her back, ready to leave. But she stopped at the door, looked back at her brother who was standing there in the middle of the dirty living room, looking small, pathetic. You know what's saddest, she said, is that they still love you. Even after everything, even knowing what you did, they still speak of you with affection. They still hope that one day you'll go back to being the son they knew. But I don't. I don't forgive you. And I don't know if I ever will. She left, slammed the door behind her, walked down the street without looking back. She cried on the way, cried with anger, with sadness, with disappointment, with loss, because the brother she knew had died. And in his place, there was a stranger full of bitterness and selfishness. But when she arrived at the apartment and saw her parents there, sitting on the couch, watching television, looking like they had just had a good lunch, looking like they had regained hope, she wiped away her tears, because they were what mattered now. They were all that mattered. And she was going to make the rest of their lives better than everything they had lost. She was going to make it worth it. 3 months passed, and the apartment that was once just a place was now a home. There were photographs on the walls, new ones of the 3 of them together, but also some old ones Helen had managed to retrieve, kept at Mrs. Henderson's house. There were plants on the balcony, which her mother cared for lovingly. There was the smell of coffee in the morning and homemade food at lunchtime. There was life. Her parents were different, not completely healed, some wounds never fully scar, but better. Her father had gained some weight. Colour had returned to his face. He read the newspaper every morning, complained about politics, rooted for his favourite football team. Small things, normal things, things that make life worth living. Her mother was also better. She cooked every day, she knitted, she talked to the neighbours, she laughed again. Not that forced laugh of someone trying to hide pain, but a true laugh of someone who had found joy in simple things again. Helen worked, but made sure to have lunch with them every day. She made sure to be present, to talk, to listen to the stories they told, even when she had heard them 1,000 times. Because now she understood. She understood that time was the most valuable gift she could give. Not money, not things, time. Presence, love. One afternoon, the 3 of them were sitting in the living room watching an old movie on television when someone rang the doorbell. Helen went to answer. When she opened the door, she was startled. It was David. He looked different, thinner, paler, with deep bags under his eyes, his clothes clean but worn. There was something in him, something broken, humble, defeated. "What do you want?" Helen asked coldly. He hesitated. "I wanted to talk to them, to Mom and Dad." "They don't want to talk to you." "Helen, please. I know I don't deserve it. I know I did horrible things. But I need to ask for forgiveness." Helen was about to close the door, but then she heard her mother's voice from inside. "Who is it, dear?" She turned, saw her mother coming towards the door, and saw the exact moment her mother recognized her son, the moment her face transformed, surprise, fear, pain, but also hope. "David," her mother whispered. "Hi, Mom." Her mother looked at Helen, then back at her son, and then she did something Helen didn't expect, something that made her furious and moved at the same time. She opened her arms. David entered, hugged his mother, and started to cry, a desperate cry of someone who had carried too heavy a guilt for too long. "I'm sorry, Mum. I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry," he repeated, sobbing. Her father appeared at the living room door, saw his son, stood there, not knowing what to do. Helen saw the struggle on his face, the anger, the hurt, but also the love. Because no matter how much we try, no matter how much we want, we can't stop loving our children, even when they destroy us. "Come in," her father said finally, his voice hoarse. David came in. They sat in the living room. There was a heavy silence, laden with everything that hadn't been said, everything that had been done, everything that had been destroyed. I don't know where to start," David said, wiping his face. "I messed everything up. I know that. I hurt you in a way that can't be forgiven. I was so lost, so angry at myself, at my life, that I took it out on you. And you didn't deserve it. You never deserved it." "Why did you do that to us, my son?" the mother asked, crying. "What did we do wrong?" "Nothing. You didn't do anything wrong. I did. I messed up my life, lost my job, got into debts, started drinking too much. And instead of owning up to my mistakes, I blamed you. I thought if you weren't there, things would get better. But they didn't get better. They got worse. Much worse." "What happened?" her father asked. David took a deep breath. "I lost the house. Couldn't pay the bills. The bank took it. And I ended up on the street too, just like you. And then I understood what I had done to you. I understood the pain, the fear, the shame, and I almost died from all the guilt." Helen observed him in silence. Part of her wanted to throw him out. Another part felt pity, because he had become exactly what he had done to his parents. And now he carried the weight of that lesson. "Where are you living?" her mother asked, concerned even after everything. "In a shelter. I got a spot in a city program. I'm getting treatment to stop drinking. I'm looking for a job. Haven't found one yet, but I'm trying. Every day I try, and every day I remember what I did to you, and I use that to not give up, to not fall again." "And you came here for what?" Helen asked, her voice harsh. "To ask for money? To ask for a place to stay? No, I didn't come to ask for anything. I just came to say I'm sorry, really sorry, and that if you never forgive me, I'll understand. I deserve it. I deserve to carry this guilt for the rest of my life." The mother looked at her father. Her father looked at Helen. Helen looked at her parents and saw there in their eyes the decision already made. "We forgive you," the mother said. Helen felt rage explode. "How can you forgive him after everything?" "Because he's our son," her father replied simply, "and we can't stop loving him, even if we try, even if it hurts." "That's not fair," Helen said, tears falling. "It's not fair to you." "Justice isn't about anger, my dear," the mother said, holding her hand. "Justice is about giving people a chance to be better, to learn, to change. And if we don't give that chance, we become as bad as those who hurt us." Helen knew her mother was right. She knew. But it hurt. It hurt to forgive. It hurt to let the anger go. It hurt to accept that some people deserve second chances, even when you think they don't. "I can't forgive you yet," Helen said to David. "Maybe one day, but not yet." "I understand," David said. "And I don't expect you to forgive me. I just hope that one day you'll see that I'm trying to be better." Helen nodded. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a start. David didn't stay long. He said goodbye, promised to visit again. His mother hugged him again. His father squeezed his shoulder, and he left, carrying a little less guilt, but still carrying the weight of his mistakes. When the door closed, Helen collapsed onto the couch. "How can you do it?" she asked. "After everything." "Because we're old, my dear," her father said, sitting beside her. And when you get old, you realize that holding a grudge is too exhausting, that life is too short to live with hatred. We prefer to live with peace, even if it's an imperfect peace. Helen hugged her parents and understood that they were stronger than her, wiser, more generous, and that she still had much to learn with them. The months continued to pass. David came back occasionally, never asked for anything, just talked, told them how his treatment was going, the job interviews he'd had, the small progresses, and little by little, very little by little, the relationship began to rebuild, not as before. It would never be as before, but as something new, something more fragile, but also more true. Helen continued working, continued taking care of her parents, continued building a life there, and she discovered that of all she had achieved abroad, the money, the career, the success, nothing compared to this, to being there, with her parents, living simple days, ordinary, normal. One evening, the three of them were on the couch again, watching television. Her mother knitted. Her father read the newspaper. Helen scrolled on her phone. And suddenly, her mother stopped knitting and looked at her. "Thank you, my dear." Helen looked at her mother, confused. For what? For coming back, for not giving up on us, for looking for us, for saving us. "I thank you for waiting," Helen said, her voice choked, "for enduring, for being here." "We always waited for you," her father said, without taking his eyes off the newspaper. "Even when it seemed like you wouldn't come back, we waited. Because we knew you would come back to us." Helen felt tears fall, but they were good tears, of gratitude, of love, of being home. "I love you both," she said. "We love you too, my dear," her mother replied. "We always have, and always will." And there, in that simple apartment with ordinary furniture, with the smell of homemade food, with photographs on the walls, with life inside it, they were happy. Not a perfect happiness, not a happiness without scars, but a real happiness, built upon pain, forgiveness, new beginnings. And in the end, that's what mattered. Not what they had lost, but what they had managed to rebuild. Not the past, but the present. Not the family they were, but the family they now were. Helen looked out the window. Outside, the city continued, indifferent, fast-paced, full of people living their lives, fighting their battles, carrying their burdens. And somewhere, in the midst of it all, there were other daughters looking for other parents waiting for other daughters, other families breaking and rebuilding. Life was like that, imperfect, painful, but also full of second chances, of fresh starts, of possibilities. And as long as there is love, even if bruised, even if broken, there is always hope. There is always a way back home. If this story touched your heart, like, comment and subscribe. Stories like this deserve to be remembered.